Alright, imagine a league pops up out of nowhere, and over the next couple of months, bribes some of the best players in the world to join, signs them for double or triple what they were making before, have nowhere except YouTube to broadcast their games, and have no intention of making money while spending and losing billions of dollars. And they're entirely okay with that. That, my friends, is LIV Golf, and it has quickly become the most controversial new league in sports. Never in my life did I think golf and controversial will be used in the same sentence. If anything, golf has always been the least controversial sport of them all. And part of what's helped it remain so uncontroversial is the sport's consistency and stability. As a sport, it really only has one top-tier league in the PGA, who've effectively run a cycle of the same majors, same courses, same rules, and same players. But as a result of this new league, that's all about to change, and what this new league is trying to accomplish is pretty insane. On the surface, LIV Golf just sounds like another league. It's an 8-tournament circuit that will compete at courses across the globe, including the United States, England, and Saudi Arabia. And if one of those doesn't sound like the others, trust your instincts. Because in reality, LIV Golf is a league backed entirely by one of those countries, Saudi Arabia. And there are some conflicting incentives as a result of this. The goal of LIV is to take over the PGA's reign as the top golf league in the world. The goal of the Saudi government, however, is to leverage this league as an opportunity to improve the country's image, status, and reputation on the global scale, a practice commonly referred to as sports washing, a form of reputation laundering. Now, quick interjection here, just want to remind y'all to like and subscribe. We're still building this up, and any support we can get is greatly appreciated. All right, so there's a few ways in which countries will go about sports washing. The first is through hosting major events such as the Olympics, the World Cup, or the Champions League final. The most blatant example of this was back in 1936 when Germany hosted the Olympics in an effort to boost their reputation on the international stage and associate something positive with their country in hopes of distracting from some of the other more negative things they were doing at the time. The second way sports washing happens is through sponsorships, where countries or state-owned companies will associate themselves with popular teams or leagues by sponsoring them and plastering their logos wherever they can. Many associate Qatar Airways' partnership with some of the world's top clubs, including Barcelona, PSG, Bayern Munich, and Roma, as an example of this. Qatar Airways is of course a state-owned property and itself was developed with the intention of improving the country's reputation. The third example of sports washing is through team ownership, a step further from simply sponsoring a team, where instead a government or state-owned entity bankrolls a team with the hopes that their success will improve the reputation of the country as well. A prime example of this is the City Football Group, controlled primarily by the Abu Dhabi royal family, who are majority owners of 7 teams across the world, including Manchester City, Melbourne City FC, and New York City FC, just to name a few. Now, what's unique about LIV Golf is that it does not fall under any of these 3 categories of sports washing, and in fact, maybe the first example we've seen where a country has actually funded their own league to improve their reputation. Now, before I move further, I want to be clear about 2 things. First is that sports washing is not exclusive to just countries. There are tons of examples of companies and individuals doing the exact same thing. The second thing I want to touch on is how something is considered sports washing, not based on the action, but on the intention. In fact, on the surface, many of the actions we associate with sports washing are really just advertising or sponsorships. It's the intention behind the sponsorships, the partnership, or ownership that classifies something as sports washing. And intention can be very hard to gauge, especially with something like this. It's rare to find an example of a country, company, or individual coming out and explicitly stating they're funding an effort with the intention of improving their reputation. Regardless of how much evidence there is, it's hard to say with 100% certainty when this is actually happening. And although we won't ever know if LIV Golf is truly a form of sports washing or just a flex by some rich Saudis, I'll lay out some of the details surrounding the league and then let y'all be the judge. First thing to look at is the roster, which includes nearly 20% of the top 100 players in the PGA, including talent like Patrick Reed, Bryson DeChambeau, Phil Mickelson, and Dustin Johnson. Johnson was actually cited as having been paid $125 million just to state his commitment. $125 million just to join. The Washington Post also reported that Tiger Woods was in fact invited to join and later rejected a high 9-figure salary to play in the tournament. Former world number 1 Rory McIlroy also rejected a lucrative offer. When asked, he said the controversial LIV series is not something he wants to participate in, and implied that the players doing so are in it purely for money. He took it a step further and stated that the golfers that did not join the new league are pleased everyone who joined LIV was effectively banned from participating in the PGA Tour. He also went on to roast some of the team names that were created. For context, LIV is doing this thing where they're not only doing individual competitions, but also team competitions. So they make 12 teams of 4 golfers, and they compete against one another at each event. But like the names that they pick for these teams, yo, they're hilarious. Yo, if you want a good laugh, go Google. I don't want to distract from the context of this video, but if you want a good laugh, go look up those team names. Hilarious. Now, with regards to the finances, per The Athletic, a total of $255 million will be awarded in prize money across the 8 LIV tournaments. Each of the regular season events will have a $25 million purse, $20 million for individual prizes, and $5 million for the top 3 teams. The top 3 individuals at the end of the season will also share an additional $30 million. And finally, another $50 million will be awarded to the winning team. There are a lot more incentives and prize money being tossed around, but honestly, it sounds like I'm just pulling random numbers out of a hat and saying the word million afterwards. So I'll summarize it like this. In total, it's said that LIV is looking to spend $2 billion. That's billion with a B over the next 2 years. And amidst all of this, the top tier players, the money, the luxurious courses, the most important part of this league, and really any league, has seemingly been neglected, and that's coverage. There are no TV networks showing LIV Golf, and it will likely be a long time until we see this happen, regardless of how big the league gets. And there's a few reasons for this. For one, networks with a long-time relationship with the PGA Tour, such as CBS, NBC, and ESPN, will likely not negotiate a deal with LIV because of their association with the PGA. Any network that chooses to show LIV on their airways are risking destroying their relationship with the PGA. The second thing to look at is how the league was put together, and to be frank, it was rushed. And because of this, it didn't leave any time for contract negotiations with networks, which often are agreed upon years in advance. Networks need time to prepare, hire staff, production teams, hosts, develop a strategy around content, and most of all, assess whether the new content is even worth bumping existing content from that time slot. The ball really only started rolling for this league a few months before the first event. Just days before the league kicked off, they were still signing players and broadcasters. Seriously, only 3 days before the first event in London, they announced 2 new golfers, Patrick Reed and Bryson DeChambeau. They were also still signing broadcasters. LIV announced Arlo White would be joining the commentating crew 48 hours before the first tee. So as a result of all this, as you'd probably expect, the viewership numbers haven't been great. LIV was actually reported as having attempted to buy airtime on Fox the week of the first event, but by failing to do so, they were relegated to streaming their content on YouTube instead. Now, to be fair, viewership did start out pretty strong. Day 1 coverage averaged around 91,000 on YouTube, though that number more than halved to 43,000 by day 2. Now, to put this into perspective, that same weekend, the PGA Tour held the Canadian Open, which ended up being the Golf Channel's most watched first round event in history, averaging 385,000 viewers. And for LIV, in-person attendance was no better. The event was actually mocked for the lack of people. One reporter even took a picture of the empty stands, and the only person that was there was fast asleep. Now, to be fair, I'm not reading too much into this. Again, part of the reason viewership and attendance were so bad was because the league is still in its infancy. Awareness is low, and a YouTube live stream from an unknown league can't compete with network TV, at least when you take into account the demographic of golf viewers. That being said, without signing any TV contracts, it will be almost impossible for the league to ever generate revenue, let alone profits, as this is the bulk of where nearly all leagues make their money, through selling their TV rights. Though given what we've outlined, that doesn't seem to be a priority for this league, almost like they have a completely different intention. Now, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. We already discussed this in the intro to this video, but it is something to keep in mind when thinking about the longevity of this league. Unlike other startup leagues, profits are not the currency here. Perception is. Regardless of how the league performs financially, as long as it hits its mark on improving the perception of the league's backers, it will be deemed a success. I really want to nail this point down. Money is not the issue here. Money is not the focus here. Money is not the currency here, as weird as that sounds. Perception is. Now, there is a bigger conversation to be had regarding sports washing as a whole. I think we have a tendency to point fingers at other countries doing this, especially those with a negative perception, such as Saudi Arabia. And trust me, I am aware. This is a negative perception they very well deserve and earned. But let's also recognize that on some level, this is embedded everywhere in sports. And this is something I think gets lost quite a bit in the discussion around LIV. In fact, you could make the argument that nearly every country in the world partakes in this. I mean, aren't well-funded Olympic teams and youth programs a form of sports washing? What about national anthems being played before games? That might be the most common example, at least here in the States. The government, by way of the military, pays money each time the national anthem is played at a sporting event. It's not for kicks or tradition. The government recognizes the value sports can play on nationalism and the perception of their country as a whole, and takes advantage of this in more ways than we realize. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not absolving the Saudi government of their faults. I just think it's a bit funny how you can't throw a dart on a map 3 times without hitting being a country that has a significant amount of blood on their hands and is using sports as a means of cleaning up their image. And again, maybe my perception here is a little bit different. My family does come from a country that was destroyed due to decisions made by many of these first world countries, the same first world countries that are using sports washing to clean up their image. Anyway, again, I don't want to get too political. I just felt the need to speak my piece there. So okay, let me take a step back here. What was the point of all this? Well, to summarize, LIV Golf is a strange league, to say the least. Given how quickly everything has been put together, it's impressive that they were able to secure a schedule, format, broadcasters, and a top-tier roster in only a matter of months. It's also a league flushed with cash, looking to spend close to $2 billion in the next couple of years with absolutely no way of making money. Literally none. They have no TV deal, no contract with sponsors, no in-person audience, and very low viewership numbers. Which raises the question, why would anyone invest this kind of money and not want to make any of it back? Well, maybe because money isn't the incentive. Maybe money isn't the currency. Maybe money isn't the focus at all. Maybe it's something else. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for making it through another video. If you want to learn more about another company I alluded to in this video, DAZN, and why they're just a horribly run business that makes absolutely zero sense, click here. And while you're doing all that clicking, click the like button, click the subscribe button. We're still building this up, and any support we can get is greatly, greatly appreciated. And that should about do it. I appreciate y'all, for real. Have a great rest of your day. Love y'all. Peace.